Hello, I'm Alan. Welcome to the Guitar Shack. So today I'm going to talk about one of my favourite topics. Well, two of my favourite topics actually. So one is Telecasters, like these, and the second is Partscasters, because the main part of this video is going to be me building a new Partscaster. But before we get into that, I just wanted to just briefly touch on the whole topic of Partscasters. Why do I do them? What's the benefits? Should you, shouldn't you? Because it comes up quite a lot. So for me, putting together a parts caster is it's almost like a separate but related hobby to actually playing guitar. Um, I've been modifying, fixing, messing around with guitars for since my teenager years, and I've always enjoyed the process of actually putting them together, wiring them up, repairing them, working on them, doing fretwork on them, all those things. Um, a little bit like I enjoy having cars. In the older days, I used to really enjoy working on cars. Nowadays, I can barely understand what the hell things are under the bonnet when I open the hood, have a look at it, I think, nah, if it doesn't have carburetors and a head gasket I can do in the morning, then it's beyond me. But I think in many ways, guitars took over that kind of creative urge that I've always had. I liked working with my hands. I liked working with mechanical type things, and basically electric guitars in particular and Fenders in particular. It's wood, it's wire, bits of metal, and it's electrics. It's relatively straightforward, and if you are interested in working with those kind of things, if you like machines, if you like technology, it's a very easy entry point into just doing something which isn't too taxing but can be very satisfying. So that's why I do it. Um, so this one's a case in point. This is it's actually my first Partscaster, and it's a 62 custom replica. And this is an example where it's a combination of good components and good workmanship, which I would argue elevates it above what you would have been able to buy off the production line. Not that you could at that time. So this started off, I bought it as a parts caster actually. So it's got a Squire Classic Vibe custom body, which these are excellent quality. They're really good quality, as good as Mexican, better than most aftermarket ones that I've seen, and perfect dimensionally, everything fits. And at the time I bought it, it actually had a Mexican Baja maple neck on it. And I bought it for a significant discount compared to what the costs of the components would have been, and ended up selling off that neck because A, they're very popular, and B, they're just too chunky for me. So that meant that I had effectively got all the components for a lot less than would otherwise have been the case. And that's one of the downsides to parts casters, because that guy lost a lot of money on the guitar that he built. But everything in this guitar is Mexican Fender or an upgrade apart from that body. So it's a 60 series neck, 60s classic series neck. All the componentry is Fender. The wiring is US spec, hand wired by me. It's got an electro socket. The upgrades are, it's got Tone Rider Vintage Plus pickups, which I would say are better, really good pickups, better than what would have come on an equivalent to this, which if you got it as a Fender product would have been, I guess, a 60s classic series, which wouldn't have had the bound body, but in a lot of the respects would have been very similar. So this is that example of you can get something that Fender didn't build, and one of the things that I pay a lot of attention to is fingerboards and fretwork. So this has had full level crown and polish. It's had the edges rolled. It's had plenty of time put into making it play really, really well. And it's a lovely guitar. And that you wouldn't have got had you bought it as a Fender. But then you would pay somebody like me to do the same amount of work to a Fender. So that's kind of a wash, I suppose. So I would argue that if Fender had built this, then it would have been in the Classic series, which would have been sitting above the Standard or the Player series at the time, Mexican product, and it would have just been a sort of slightly fancier version of the 60s version that they did build. The next step up in the Fender range at the time was this, and this is a Japanese Fender 62 Custom. In this case, it's ocean turquoise metallic, which is a very rare Japan only colour. But these were on sale at the time, still are. It's been a staple of the Japanese product line, and these tend to sit in the market for about double what you would pay for a Classic Series 60s if it's in really good condition. Sometimes you drop a little bit less than that. In this case, because it's a special colour, it's probably at least double. And there's not, I've had both of these stripped down, and there's not a material difference really in the quality of the bodies. They're very similar quality. The wiring on the Japanese ones are generally not as good as USA ones. So versus a Partscaster, the Partscaster's got better components. This has got Texas Specials, which are really nice pickups. I'm not sure they're worth the price premium you pay for them versus something like the Tone Rider Vintage Plus, but they're very nice pickups. The advantage that the Japanese ones have got is the necks. They are fantastic. They play really well, and out of the box, these are just beautiful, nicely rolled edges, beautiful fretwork. Having said that, I don't think it's actually that much better than what I've managed to achieve with the Mexican neck that I have upgraded. So then got into this one, which is another example. This is really an example of something that Fender never built. So it's that kind of you can select what you want aspect of Partscasters. So this one is a 2010 Blacktop body in candy apple red. It's got a Fender Genuine Parts Player Series block inlaid neck. I never saw them put this on an actual production guitar, and I don't know why, because I think it's pretty cool. I do like the block inlays on it. It's got classic gear split post tuners, and the custom wiring, so it's all CTS and switchcraft and all the right bits. It's got split coils for, these are iron gear humbuckers, which are really nice, reasonably priced pickups, but they're really decent quality. And the only thing that's really aftermarket apart from the pickups is the bridge. So it's one of these humbucker sized telly style one piece bridges, which I just like the look of. And then I put three saddles on it to give it that more of a kind of classic look. So it's an acquired taste, but it's just, I like the idea of this guitar with sort of fairly classic appointments, and I love the colour. So that's the kind of, you can get the guitar that you want, but nobody else will build it aspect of doing Partscasters. Now, I don't always use Fender components. This one is not a single Fender component on it. So it's got an aftermarket roasted maple neck, which is nice. It's got an unknown origins second-hand Thinline body. Could be classic vibe, not sure. And then it's all wired up with iron gear splittable single coils. So these are the ones where it's switchable for a vintage wind or a hot wind. They're quite fun, and it's got a Wilkinson bridge on it. So that's all aftermarket, everything about it. But it's a fun guitar. Didn't cost me much. It's never going anywhere, but you know, it scratched the itch for a Thinline. And then finally, before I get into the new build, this is the opposite end of the scale. So this is my forever Stratocaster, I guess, and it's been through various iterations and had various sets of components as I have evolved it over time. So basically, this started off with a 2001 Stratocaster American Deluxe and neck, and it had a genuine American Deluxe body with it, but it was in an amber colour and it had a big chunk out of it, which made it pretty much unsaleable even when I had tarted up the best that I could. So I decided to keep it and I looked for a new body, and I initially put a genuine parts replacement black body on it and was going to keep it that way. But then this is, I think, a 2004, but it's an American standard, but it's an ash, two colour ash, and it's absolutely lovely. So I found that at a good price, so I put that with the deluxe neck, and then I also was able to find this loaded pickguard, although it was a white plastic pickguard at the time. I've changed it to black, but it is a genuine deluxe series or American Deluxe pickguard with noiseless pickups and the S1 switch. And then finally the body came with a brand new American Pro bridge. So every single component in this guitar is US Fender. And again, it's been assembled with a great deal of care. The frets have been levelled, crowned and polished, and it all plays beautifully. So as a partscaster, this is fairly top of the range. But, you know, the economic reality is that I've got maybe, I don't know, 800, 900 pounds worth of components in here. And I would say it is comparable to an American Deluxe, and they tend to go for between 1,000 and 1,200 in the UK. But this is never worth that, and in fact, it's not even worth the components. So I will always keep this one because it's much better than its market value would ever be. But probably, because it's a partscaster, it probably wouldn't sell for more than about 600 quid. So why would I ever let it go? And that's really the dilemma. If you're looking at partscasters from an economic point of view as a means to build the guitar that you want to have and to keep with the spec that you want for a reasonable cost, then there's a lot to be said for them. And if you're looking at them as something to do because you enjoy the process, there's a huge amount to be said for them. But if you're looking at them as an alternative to just buying one off the shelf and then looking to chop them and change them over time, don't, because they don't make economic sense. So if you do it as a keeper, they're a great thing to do, and I highly recommend it. So just to wrap up, and before I get on to showing you the actual build, I think the other thing to say about building partscasters is that it's fantastic for just learning all the skills that you need to be able to maintain your own guitars. I think a lot of people do build guitar kits and then learn the basic skills from that and then go on to build partscasters, because it does get quite addictive. I skipped the kits and went straight to building partscasters out of Squires and then Mexican components. But you realise very quickly that A, you understand how the parts work, and B, that everything is replaceable and everything is fixable, and it just gives you a confidence to really understand your instrument and how to set it up. And I think that in itself is valuable. So that's probably the final reason where I would recommend getting into it. So now let's start looking at the birth of a Telecaster. The starting point for this build, like many of my builds, was randomly looking on eBay for parts and seeing what was out there. And I came across this, which is a Sienna Sunburst American Pro 2 body. So US made, top of the range, really nice, heavily figured ash with this reddish burst around the edge. And this was in good condition. It's got a few minor scratches, but nothing that won't polish out. But the main reason why I guess it was up for sale was there had been some damage here and the finish was missing. And because of that, it was pretty cheap on eBay. and it was going for less than the price of most of the Mexican bodies that were out there. So the first thing I did was to just drop fill that with some glue boost and then level it out. So it's not a perfect colour match. You're certainly going to see it if you're looking for it. But let's face it, it's going to be sitting behind the neck, and the only person that's ever going to be looking for it is me. So that seemed like a pretty decent starting point. So my original intention was that I was going to use this body to rebuild an existing build that I have with an aftermarket ash body in blue, which has got a really nice neck on it and some nice hardware. Everything else being Fender. So I thought, well, I'll bring it up to being a complete Fender guitar. However, continuing to browse as one does, I then came across this. So this is an American Performer neck, rosewood, and it's a 2018. It's in good condition. Given the frets a polish and checked them for level, but there's absolutely no wear on them, and in good shape. So I thought, well, okay, I've got a US body, it might as well have a US neck. And one of the things that I like about US necks is the edges, the rolling on them. Now, Performers aren't as heavily rolled as standards are, but it's still a much nicer feeling edge than, say, a Player Series Mexican. So I'm sort of assuming that it's similar in terms of how much it's rolled to one of the current Player 2s. But either way, like the look of this and like the feel of it, so that seemed like a good starting point. So given that I'd got all US neck and body, then I thought obviously I need to raise the game a little bit and make this a very high end build compared to most of mine, which are Mexican based, as you know. So the first thing is with the American Pro body, it uses a different bridge. So it uses this bridge, which has got a different layout for the strings and the screws at the back. And it's got a nice blingy Fender script on it. Now, I couldn't find one of these second hand, so I did spring for one of these new. So that's on there. So then looking at the other end, I've got obviously to put tuners on it. I've got various sets of Fender tuners in stock, but that's mainly because I generally take the modern ones off and I put these on. So these are Fender classic gear tuners, which are vintage style. They've got split posts at the end, but they fit modern 10mm tuning holes with the two location pins in them. So these actually are standard on American Performers, which the neck is. So I got those to go on there, which brings me to pickups. And again, I wanted to go reasonably high end, all Fender, all US. So I invested in a set of Texas Specials. I do like these pickups. I'm sometimes unconvinced that there's that much of a difference between Texas Specials and the Tex Mexes, particularly on Strats. I've got several sets of Tex Mex on Strats and I really like them. But I thought, why not? If I'm going high end, I'll go for the full custom shop. So they're going in. Obviously, need a pick guard. Black is the way to go, I thought. I have lots of different colours, but I'm currently thinking it's going to be black with the nice dark rosewood neck. It'll just give it a kind of nice dark vibe, which I like. And then I'm into the peripherals. So out of the parts box, got genuine Fender control plate with some CTS pots. I've got 4-way switch to go in. And then we're into the small bits. So got some string ferrules to go in there. Got an orange drop for the wiring. And I've got an electro socket because any decent tele build needs an electro socket. Obviously, with it being the American Pro body, it's got the cutaway heel, so I've got the correct bridge plate, neck plate for it. And I've got this little half ashtray cover to go on the bridge. Don't know if we'll put that on, but I'll give it a go and see what it's like. And that's it in my box of goodies. So this is the start of my fanciest ever partscaster build. So I've got a few bits of preparation work to do before I start the actual build. Now this body is used and you'll be able to see just a few very light scratches around the edges and in the usual places of wear and tear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some scratch remover polish and polish up this body to get it as clean and pristine as possible before I build it. Obviously it will not stay that way because it will be a guitar that gets used, but I might as well start it in as good a position as possible. And then the other thing that I've done is the performer neck is actually matte finished on the face of it, same as it is on the back. So I've put several coats of clear over the top of that, partly to darken it slightly. It was a little bit light for my liking, but also just because I prefer the look of a glossed headstock. And as you probably will be able to see, I've yet to do the cut and polish to get that completely smooth. So that's the other thing that I'm going to do now before I build.
So here I'm just wet sanding with successively finer grades of sandpaper just to knock down the orange peel.
So that's knocked the sheen right back off it. It's nice and flat. In fact, it's flatter than it was before I started putting the gloss on it. And now I'm going to polish that up and it'll bring the sheen right back. So the next bit gets a little bit messy. So I've just masked off the cavities on the body and just put a little bit of tape over where the string throughs go, just to try and keep some of the muck out of the innards of the guitar. And the same, I've masked off the neck, just stuffed the holes and masked it round just to keep the compound where it should be.
So I used an electric polishing wheel on my drill to apply the compound. They gave it a good polishing all over, and then I used a buffing wheel to take that all back off again. And then finally I applied a couple of coats of Axe Wax to give it a good protection and a good shine. So that's sort of the end result. Then onto the tuners. So the classic gears drop straight into the 2-pin mountings and are then bolted onto the front the same way as modern ones.
So that's all the bits ready to go. Time to start assembling. So here is the loom, wired up in the alternative fashion, 4-way wiring, and with an electro socket. So that's ready to now get the pickups in, and then we'll get that all installed.
So start off by assembling the bridge pickup into the bridge plate. And then when that's done, I twisted the wires just for a bit of extra shielding. And then fitting the ground wire for the bridge here. And then same thing here, just feeding the wiring from the bridge through into the control cavity. Then we're on to fitting the bridge itself. So I'm dipping the screws in some candle wax just to lubricate the threads before they go in. just helps them to locate better, and that's all fully fitted. Then next we're on to the neck pickup, which is fitted into the pick guard, and then again I'm twisting the wiring and then feeding that through into the control cavity, and then we're ready, but zipping it up, and then we're ready to get into the soldering. So plug it in, just testing, and it all worked, which is good. And then final zipping up of the scratch plate, and all done. So this is the end result of, at least of the body, so fully assembled and ready to get bolted up. So next up is fitting the neck. So I'd already drilled the additional hole in the neck so that it could fit onto the Ampro body with the offset screw holes, and then that's me just fitting the micro tilt plate with a little bit of extra help. And then the moment of truth. So in the Fender factories, they apply the serial numbers to the necks, but not to the bodies. And then when the body and the neck gets bolted up, then that's when the serial number applies to the whole guitar. So I guess technically this is the birth of this Telecaster. So into the finishing touches then, so I'm fitting early style domed control knobs, and then just put a little bit of masking tape on the switch tip blade before I put the tip on to stop it flying off. And then on the headstock, for some bizarre reason, the previous owner had moved where the string tree sat, so I'm moving it back to the original location. So I just need to re-drill that. And then I've used one of the modern style string trees, which these are the ones that are on American Pros. They're quite traditional looking, but they're much smoother and they let the strings run nicely. So I like these a lot. They look better than some of the clunky roller ones that have been on some of the other more modern Fenders lately. And then we're into stringing up. And then onto the fitting of the strings onto the tuning heads. So these are vintage style tuners. I'm a big fan, but basically all you do is you pull it to the machine head that you need it fitted to, and then you do between 2.5 and 3 tuners along, 2.5 at the lower ones and then 3 at the higher ones because there's just more winds on the narrow strings. And then you just slot it straight into the hole that's in the middle, and then you pull it down and twist it round the side and just hold it like that with some tension on it, and then you just tune it up. In this case with a tuner which is running out of battery. But with the battery replaced, the rest of them went rather more quickly. But that's all there is. Cut them to length, stick them through the hole and just wind them on. And because there's very few winds, they're rock solid stability. So tuning up. So the first thing I do is measure the relief, and as I had expected, because that neck had already been straightened out for levelling, then when you put it under string tension it came in at exactly 10 thou, which is just about right, slightly high perhaps for a telly, but it was a good starting point. And the actual string heights at the 12th were a little bit low, just fitted and strung up out the box. So I just set them all roughly to my sort of standard level, which is about 1.5mm on the bass E and 1.3mm at the treble E, and then just sort of fade them across. And then the last thing I was doing here was setting the intonation, which is a dull and repetitive process, but it's absolutely necessary so the guitar plays properly in tune. So here's the end result, strung up, set up and ready to play. So I'll plug it in and let's have some sounds.
So just a few sounds, but before we do that, it's been a slight change of plan. So as I was doing the more detailed setup last night, the neck pickup crapped out and zero resistance, no sound output. So I tested it in the guitar, it wasn't working. I took it out of the guitar, it still wasn't working. So it's obviously shorted out for some reason, which is a bit of a pain. So I took that one out. I took out the matching bridge pickup because I bought them as a pair, so I need to return them as a pair. So I've now used this set of pickups, which are Seymour Duncan hot for telly. So it's an STL2 and an STR2, which are actually quite similar to the Texas Specials. They're high output. That's it's about 14K on the bridge pickup and about 10K on the neck. So they're quite hot. They're a bit more mid-rangey, less twangy than most telly pickups. So a lot of people don't like them because they're not, twangy telly. I like them because they're not twangy telly and they're a bit more, I think, versatile and a bit warmer, smoother. So that's what I've done. We'll see how Fender's return policy is on that. I'm slightly unimpressed by the product failing, but products fail. That's fine. It's what they do afterwards that counts, isn't it? And I mean, these are decent, very, very decent pickups, equivalent pickups actually. The only reason I didn't use them in the first place was I've got them earmarked for another project, and I quite fancied having this every component Fender, which is why I went for the Texas Specials. So we'll see what happens. I'm assuming they'll replace them, and they might go back in anyway. So anyway, without further ado, so we've got a neck pickup. The other thing I did was, because these were two wire, I just put in a standard 3-way switch. So I've gone old school with this build at the moment. So I've got a standard parallel middle setting, which does sound quite nice. And then neck. And then that's quite nice for picking. So Obviously this is the twangiest, so that's how it sounds clean. Let's have a little bit of drive. And then a bit more gain. And back to clean. Quite nice in the middle, setting on clean. It's got a nice that's what it sounds like.
So this is what I've ended up with. So let's just take a look at what it's cost me. So the body was obviously second hand off eBay, so that was 175 quid. The neck also was second hand off eBay, and that was 194 quid. So those were the two bits that are the kind of the wild cards, because those are entirely based on what you can find at the time and how good a deal you can get. The bridge was new, so that was 60 quid. The pickups, well, the original Texas Specials were new, so they're 145. The tuners were also new, so those are 45 quid. And then just all the little peripherals like the string trees, the string ferrules, the strap locks, the wiring kit, had I bought it all new, and then the pick guard, all of that totted up, if you replicated it completely, it's £704. What I actually ended up paying, given that I've used in the end the pickups that I already had, so the Seymour Duncans were out of my parts box, the string trees were, the string ferrules were, the strap locks, I used existing wiring and an existing pick guard, so I'm actually into this guitar for £472, but that's dependent on actually having those parts available. So if I assume that I'm going to put the replacement Texas specials back in. I guess I'm in for about $6.50, which I think isn't bad for a guitar of this quality. So if I compare it to buying a Fender, then an American Performer, they tend to go between 800 and 1,000 in the UK used, depending on condition and spec. They do a honeyburst version, which does look quite similar to this, similar kind of sunburst, and it's got a dark guard. But obviously this one has got, because it's got the American Pro body and fittings, then it's, you know, it's that step up from the body end. Obviously it's not an American Professional. Those tend to be higher, so those tend to sit around the £1,500 to £1,700 mark. This one obviously doesn't have that neck. It's got equivalent everything else. So I think overall value for money, it's pretty good.
So there we have it. Not actually born in the USA, but all the major components were, so that's good enough for me. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed that. If you like my content, there's lots more about Telecasters and Partscasters in general on my channel, so please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you back in the shack next time.